Good evening, folks. I'm just getting ready to watch A Thin Red Line. But before I do that, I'd like to start what will be one of my final series for a while. Well, I will always do midnight movies and other things. You just have to check my website. There's always new things going on the YouTube website. I always include the link with these on Facebook if you want to check it out, etc., etc. But this is still the Cigarette Burns series. But what we're talking about now are the top 12 movies of all time. I just recently had a Facebook post. It was a very popular one about what people thought the top 12 movies of all time, in my opinion, were. Some guessed right. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there were two that were guessed. I have to go back and double check. One was 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I said was number 6 or number 7. I haven't quite made a determination, but it'll be a while before we get there. And then there was number 2, which was Citizen Kane. Okay. Again, these will be fairly short. The only true one that will be a two-parter will be the number 1 movie of all time. And you'll just have to wait for that. And that will be probably about a good 25 minutes in length. Again, you don't have to watch it all. I don't really care. It just depends on your opinion and view. I'm trying to find my list. Is all. Okay, I don't see it, but it doesn't matter because I'm only talking about number 12 today. Okay, so let's get on with it. Let's get on to the countdown. Number 12, which is called Trip to the Moon by, I believe the director's name is Malaise. Okay? This is a very, 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 very old film. Okay? You can watch it on YouTube for free. You can also watch other things that he has made, such as The Living Fan and different things like that. Trip to the Moon has a very famous rocket that lands in the moon's eye, and so on and so forth. So, why is it number 12? Well, okay, first of all, let's talk about the history of it first, so I can justify why it's number 12. The history is this is a very, very early silent film. Very, very early. We're talking, I believe when this was made was about 1920 or so, maybe 1919, okay, right after World War I, if you want reference to history. This was made, so you're talking about a time period in cinema history where it was transitioning from carnival atmosphere, where you would sit and watch what was called a magic lantern. You go into a room, or you just put a piece of cloth over you, and you watch through a visor moving pictures. Okay, it was a carnival type atmosphere that those happened in. A lot of times they were nudie things or salacious things and things like that. But at this point, they had started to transition into some types of theaters, mostly on stages, because there weren't really truly theater houses. That came after A Birth of a Nation, which is an entirely different film and an entirely different topic. But that caused movie houses to start because that film was so popular for its time, which is both sad and speaks to the nature of life on this planet to a certain degree. If you've never seen Birth of a Nation, don't watch it. You can, of course, as reference. Just be very careful when you watch it, okay? It is absolutely illegal to publicly screen this film, okay? I've seen it on a big screen in a film class, but that's because you are allowed to show it in a film class, because it is about the South and the rise of the KKK, where the KKK are portrayed as heroes. Okay, the director's name was Griffith, D.W. Griffith, I believe. And anyway, it was so popular that it caused movie houses to start. And that's twofold, because it wasn't just because people were anti-African American. It's because a lot of people disagreed with it, too. And they wanted to talk about it. Okay? D.W. Griffith was a classic Southerner who grew up in the South. And this was his film. Okay? And it has one of the most disgusting scenes I've ever seen in the history of cinema, which is after several of the Ku Klux Klan members are killed, they ascend to heaven where blacks are not allowed. So again, as I said before, watch this movie at your own discretion. Okay? But that's not the one we're talking about. That came, I believe that came in about 25 or so. somewhere in there. Okay, but this was before even that. Okay, so Trip to the Moon is, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. It's perfect in every way for a film that was made at that time. There are special effects. It has an intriguing story. It's Jules Verne-esque in nature, which Jules Verne would have been a brand new author at that time. You're talking about Journey to the Center of the Earth and so on and so forth, which is Doc Brown's favorite writer of all time. So I happen to side with Doc Brown on this. He's not my particular favorite writer of all time, but I do like those stories quite a bit. Anyway, so it's Jules Verne-esque, and to further along this, again, it's about maybe, I think, 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even shorter than that. Okay, because you're talking about when these films were made, they were made on what was called a one-reeler. Okay, this was possibly a two-reeler. I can't remember. I think it's about every 45 minutes, I believe, that was a reel of film that they would play. And again, there was no sound and there was no color. So what would have been accompanied at this time when you sat down in this theater would have been a piano that would have went along with it. Okay, so just imagine just going in and watching this movie that was considered cutting edge. It would be the same as going and seeing a Marvel movie now to them, which is astonishing. You're talking about Méliès was basically the first special effects director. So he is the great grandfather of George Lucas, so to speak. Which led rise to yet another movie, which I will talk about because it is in the top 10 as well. And it is like that. I'll get to it when I get to it. I will leave you in suspense and leave you with it is one of the most well-known films of all time that you have completely forgotten about, but see every 20 years. Okay, so that I'll leave you with that. That's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have my list with me, but I believe I put that at number 10. But we're talking about Trip to the Moon. And again, the reason this is number 12 is several reasons. The technical aspects of it were perfect, okay, for the time. Obviously, if you take it to today's standards with Marvel and things, it's not going to be. But if you're talking about 1919, 1920, yeah, that's absolutely astonishing. There's a lot of trick photography that was used in it. He also pretty much invented trick photography to a certain degree. They were just learning about concepts like the Kuleshov effect, which I can explain. It's a technical term. It's where you show one shot and then followed by another shot. Okay, so let's take it like this: the shot of a woman smiling, then you have a shot of a man scantily clad diving into a pool. Okay, that creates something. Now, this shot with the woman smiling, she didn't even have to be there and see that. But when you see the diving into the pool of the man that's scantily clad, you put two and two together, and that's called the Kuleshov effect. Okay, it's bringing two things together. It's how music works to a certain degree too. Is that you're combining what happened before and what's happening now into how you interpret what's going on. Okay, and failing that, a woman smiling and a rat. Okay, now we have a much different point of view. Why is she smiling at the rat? Is she sinister? What's going on? And again, she doesn't have to be there, and the rat doesn't have to be there. But when you put those two together, your brain automatically associates them with, oh, she's smiling because she saw the rat. Okay, again, this was a concept that was just coming out. All right, so you have to keep that in mind too. There was another important director that was on the scene at this time. His name was Sergei Eisenstein. And one of his movies is in the top 10, okay? I will be frank with you. It is very, very high for obvious reasons, and it's completely technical reasons. The story was good too, though. Okay, but that is for another time. So, again, Méliès took this film and basically made it his own. It is completely unique in nature. It has a very 20-esque science fiction look to it, which is very, very cool. If you're interested in I believe they not parodied this video, but used it as influence in one of the Smashing Pumpkin videos. So if someone would please tell Evan Bingham that, Eli, please, I don't know how to get a hold of him, so please do. That I talked about his Smashing Pumpkins in the greatest films of all time because they used one of the greatest films of all time for one of their music videos. I believe it was 1979, if I'm saying that correct. But I may be thinking of the James Blunt song. It was whatever the 1971 was, I believe. Or Tonight, Tonight. I think it was actually Tonight, Tonight. They used the influence of the mise en scene, which we have discussed at length, but I will bring up again, which is everything you see and hear in the cinema world when you're watching a film. They use the mise en scene to help them with Tonight, Tonight. So I will include the link to both of them. I will include a link, to Trip to the Moon. I will include a link to the Smashing Pumpkins video. Okay, there will be several links here. All right, so just in case you want some reference to this, and just failing that, it was just an interesting story. It's about, and they fight moon men, which is really fun. Obviously, we had not been to the moon at that point, if you can believe that, and it's just very interesting to think about. That man was already thinking about going to the moon at that time. This is well before Kennedy and the space race, well before the communist bloc really took over. You're talking about when the October Revolution came, I believe was in the early 30s, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. So it's somewhere, maybe 25, somewhere in there. Again, you're talking about a time period that was very different because this was after World War I, which a lot of people refer to in literature as the modernist period. It was a very dark time in literature. You have James Joyce's Ulysses, and so on and so forth. Very dark pieces of literature. They talk about the futility of life because of how empty that war was and the massacres that went on. When you think about World War I, you're talking about probably the greatest savage war in recent history, so to speak. I mean, certainly with what we have now, with the conflicts where people blow up innocent people and things like that, and the guerrilla warfare that goes on, that is very hard for us to comprehend, not living in those societies, why they would do something like that, for sure. But the true brutality of World War I cannot be overstated. I'm also going to include a link to, I believe the name of it is called They Shall Not Be Forgotten. It's a new documentary about World War I. Okay, it's colored. It's put in color. They did extensive research in color. I would definitely recommend listening to Peter Jackson talk about the making of the film after it is done. It is a very, very good film. It is highly worth watching. I saw it in the theater and I saw it in 3D. It cost me an arm and a leg. I believe it was $15 to go see it on a special screening, but it was worth every penny. But again, that will give you a reference to what they really dealt with after that war was done. Okay, so you have kind of an idea of what's going on. Okay, so I'm giving you some film assignments. Take them at your discretion. I don't really care if you watch them or not. I would just watch the Tonight Tonight video because it's just awesome. And it's Smashing Pumpkins. And it reminds you that the 90s did exist and that we were once very popular people. Except for me. Let's take a look here. Is there anything else I want to cover about Trip to the Moon? Nope, because you just watch the film and see why it's so important. And again, this is number 12 on the countdown. So until then, Auf Wiedersehen.